Welcome to Draw Process. I'm Ike, drawing my comic book pages here in this Draw Process series, page 4 of First Sun and Sword number 3 today. So, our heroes just came up over a hill and looked surprised. That leaned into the page turn. And this page is a page turn because this will be the left-hand page since it's an even number page. We see what they see, a surprising image. A boy, an older boy, teen, young man, is constricted against a tree by a python, and another young man is fighting to free him from that. So these three, the python and the two boys, are just locked into this horrific kind of situation in a clearing. I just wanted a nice open space. I wanted it to just stand alone. And just let the reader take it in, this large image, as the characters are taking it in. I'm going to go from this, and you'll see as I'm penciling it, I'm trying to find a dynamic energy to the pose of this boy that's on the right. He's pulling at the python, trying to make space, and he's got a dagger dug in, a knife dug into it. While the python's lunging at him. And so the way he's leaning back with his spine is so far back, his arms stretched, I'm trying to capture a real tension in his figure, really bring it to life. And I'm trying to create a nice shape between the tree, the two boys, and the python. So there's a silhouette formed between the python and the boy. And the tree. So they kind of clump together. They together they form one whole, but there's separation between them to some degree. And I wanted energy with the python too. That's why it's got the curve and the open mouth. It looks like it is lunged forward. Now, I was using my phone to look at python images on Google search. I'm trying to get an idea of the anatomy and the structure. I'm not finding images that represent the exact angles that I need or anything like that. I just I want to draw snakes a little more accurately. That's not something I draw every day. In the past, maybe I would have gotten a sketchbook out and practiced these animals, but I'm comfortable just, if I need a reference in the moment, go ahead and pull it up and just work it right then and there, and know when I need to pull it up, when it's the right kind of urge to do so, or when it's coming from getting in the way of a flow of being creative. So that's what happened there. We saw the large image, and now we came in to these two smaller panels that give you a closer look and a closer feel into the subjective experience of these two boys. And all I need is two panels, A and B, side by side, same size. And then in the bottom panel, we're going to see Sword lunging into action. I want his forward momentum to be very energetic, dynamic, and I want it to be in contrast to Farah and Sun, who are still static. I want to convey how quick he is, but also just how he doesn't hesitate to take action. So Farah, maybe she's trying to assess the situation, scanning around to see if there's any other threats before she engages, and Sword's not like that. It relates to a theme in the story. As I'm trying to use this story to create a window into Sword and his philosophy, his religion, in a sense, his way of life. He's a bit like a monk that travels through the lands at this point. He had a prior life as more of an assassin or mercenary. He did some other things, but for quite a while he's been living in this fashion with Farah at his side, and So out of love for him and his way of life, that she's trying to like grow in her practice of his practice, she's been going with him like this for a while. And here, I got the figures. The on the hill on the horizon, their feet are all lined up, but they're in perspective nonetheless. There is depth. And so that was a little bit tricky to capture here. I wanted to make sure sun and fair both made it into the shot and their silhouettes weren't interfering with each other too much. They're nice and clear. You know, if someone misunderstands the drawing, that'd be my fault, too. But it could look like sun is very large in comparison to fair, but this is the depth. So as I started to doodle it in, I realized, okay, I'm trying to squeeze them in. I'm just making decisions in real time. But I'm also seeing, oh, okay, so their feet are basically lined up on this hill. And if their feet are all in a nice straight line on the hill, close to a straight line, as the depth continues, that's the horizon. So it's only at that moment that I realized, like, oh, my horizon line is very low, which means that as it moves, we're going to see under the chin. As we move up from the horizon, we're getting an upward view of things. We're looking up at things, so we're going to see under them a bit. So then I had to revisit the drawing of sword and the others as well, and think, okay, now their shoulder line, their collarbone shoulder line, their hip line, and their jaw line, the tilt of their head. Am I showing three-dimensionality? Are they in perspective? We're slightly looking up at them, or are we just looking perfectly sideways at them? Because if his shoulders are perfectly aligned and their feet are perfectly aligned, there's no perspective drawn into the picture, or very little. And you can play with that. You can do really extreme perspective where it's distorted, but it creates dynamics. It's cool. Or like if a camera is really far away, in a sense, a narrow lens, you can kind of squash the depth. So you can get away with quite a bit. And I think I have a video where I talk a bit about that, or at least a blog post on Clever Kaiju where I try to talk about the idea of lenses, and I should add to that more. I should add some more ideas when it comes to the effects cameras have and how we can mimic that and use it to our advantage to think that way in our comics. I know I've seen there are comics that are older, pre-internet. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen comics where they will reference, I can tell that the artists have referenced stage productions. Maybe there's less movies and stuff, so they're looking up stage production, and they're creating images that have that same kind of, the depth is kind of squashed. The camera's not close. It's someone far away viewing it. Some of the, epic films back in the day, they definitely would bring the camera further away. And so if they're using that for reference, it was influencing the way they set up their shots, and it had a way of kind of flattening everything. Sometimes there's a benefit to that. If you want to squeeze in more characters around a table or something, you might want to just flatten it out. Give it. No one's super small in the background and someone's big in the foreground. Their sizes are similar, so you get a nice view of everybody. So there may be reasons for it, but I think it had to do with the reference they're using, the influences they have. Whereas today we have influences in film that get pretty experimental, pretty extreme, and it's no longer just what would the human eye see, but what else could we convey? Things like a solar flare, things getting out of focus, or the focus being brought into one point, all kinds of film effects. So I think that's fascinating. Um, let's see, the inking. So at the end of my last book, I started using halfway through, I guess, or a little before halfway, I started using the G pen, the nib, dipping in ink. And that was a learning curve, and it was a slow transition throughout the book from more of a focus on finished lines with hard shadow areas to cross hatching and etch, hatching and etching in shadows and form. And and so I'm still, learning and experimenting with that. Even struggling at times with ink that's too thick. So I maybe add a little water, or a nib that's getting too worn out. That was something new for me this time, is to realize that, eventually these nibs, the metal loses its kind of durability, its sort of structure, the way it'll kind of bounce back into shape after you press on it. And that'll affect the line quality. So things like that you learn as you go. One thing that it's allowed me to do is my drawings are looking more like my pencils, because with a pencil I can just sketch in shadows, scribble in background elements without trying to get detailed. But then with my inking style that I used before, I would be very specific with my line work. It was quite in contrast to my pencils, and sometimes it would look stiff. Whereas as a penciler, as a drawer, I'm not stiff. So this is more true to me, to ink this way. There's different pens you can use that might help. I mean, the tools will affect your process. You might experiment with that. I know Micron's, the tip is kind of flat. If you get something with more of a bullet tip, something that flows out faster, you can definitely get a little line weight variation. It'll just change the way you draw, what tools you use. And I'm moving towards drawing with the ink. So my pencils are not as refined as they used to be. And then I can change things and move things around and add in details within the inking process. So I'm moving more and more towards drawing with the ink, and it's more natural because it's more like how I draw at this point. One result of that is I'm not always spotting my shadows as effectively, so things become more, I guess, less realistic in terms of lighting, and more of referential kind of thing, symbolic. Like some of the hatching that I put on these figures is not necessarily how the light should operate. It's more to convey three dimensionality and form. And so if you take that to the extreme, then everyone's lighted the same way in every shot. There's not really lighting at all. It's just used to add form. So I don't want to go completely that direction, because I like having light and shadow and planting things in a space, an environment. To me, that's important to the story. You'll notice there's creators who focus much more on facial expressions and animating the characters, maybe multiple panels of the expression changing, so that you gather their emotional reaction to things. And there's characters who focus more on anatomy, or more on construction of environments in a three-dimensional sense. There's a way that we show our biases, our interests come across, and how we construct things and tell the story. And I'm biased towards a bit of the acting for sure, but also I want the environment to feel real, grounded. But I'm not big on completely constructing things and designing things. I lost some of the video for the ink washing process, but you saw just a little bit of it. It's pretty straightforward. I just spread the wet ink over it, and then I add a few layers if I need to. So there's the finished book, the finished page, I mean, and I think it turned out pretty decent. You'll notice the ink wash, that gray tone does help separate foreground and background. That's another reason that I'm probably less utilizing a solid shadow, like a black and white positive negative space approach, because now with the gray I can create depth that way. And here's the cover to the book. It's available now, and I'll see you next week for another draw process for page 5.